You know, Tom Macdonald, that homophobic, transphobic, racist, ugly, ignorant, bigot rapper.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sick and tired of the webs they spin. Got everyone divided with the lies they spin. Have to watch what we...
What's up, Breakdown Gang? It's your boy JD here. I am back with episode 2 of the Breakdown Corner, the news for working class people. What's up, y'all? It's good to see you again. It's good to be back again. Guys, we have a lot to talk about. We've got a lot going on. We've got Biden just gave a crazy speech with all these red lights. I'm sure everybody's seen the pictures. I'm sure everybody has heard Tim Pool and other people throwing around Civil War. Even the mainstream media are throwing that term around. That's really scary. Guys, as a huge nerd, I have to talk about the new Lord of the Rings. New Game of Thrones, The House of Dragons, and the Lord of the Rings prequel, The Rings of Power, both came out within a couple weeks of each other, and we've got to touch on that. But first, we've got to touch on the big story is the economy, the stuff going on in Europe, the electricity stuff going on in California, and all that jazz. So we're going to get into all that. Guys, first, if you haven't already, thank you so much for the view. Please like and subscribe to the channel, hit that little bell notification, all that stuff whenever I upload a video, whenever I upload any content. In other news, Tom Macdonald has a new video coming out Friday, and he has not been working quite as often as he was. I'm sure he is behind the scenes. I know he's writing a whole new album, but as far as like releasing videos every Friday like he was for a long time, I think he got a little bit worn out, and more power to him, because sometimes an artist needs a little break to create his best work. So I can't wait to, we're gonna check out some of his posts at the end of the show here and talk about what the new video could be, because I think it could touch on all this stuff. So anyway, guys, let's get right into it. Okay, so first off, we've got these protests in Europe. We've got Putin explaining what's going on. I know that they are at the Eastern Economic Summit or Forum right now. So this is kind of like the World Economic Forum or the Western Economic Summit or whatever, but it's like the Eastern countries version of it. So there are some really important decisions being made right now. I'm hearing rumors about them like getting off of the petrodollar, the US dollar for the currency for petrol, and it's all just really crazy stuff. So let's get right into this. We've got here on timcast.com, we've got the news. Here it says EU to impose a mandatory electricity cuts to flatten the curve, reduce risk peak energy demands. So here we have announced plans for mandatory electricity rationing, with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen telling reporters the EU must flatten the curve of peak energy crisis. All right, so let's check this out. Let's see what she's got to say here.
Afternoon. We are facing an extraordinary situation, not only because Russia is an unreliable supplier, as we have witnessed over the last days, weeks, months, but also because Russia is actively manipulating the gas market.
Okay, let's just point this obvious elephant in the room out. Russia's not the one who imposed any sanctions here.
I'm deeply convinced that with our unity, our determination, our solidarity, we will prevail. And we have, over the last 6 months during this war, very much increased our preparedness, and we have weakened the grip that Russia had on our economy and our continent.
Okay, so right now, cords of wood are going for over $1,000 in Germany. They've gone from nearly everybody, like 94% of the country, heating their homes through natural gas, like modern societies do, and now they're looking for wood and things to burn. They're in coal lines. Basically, here we go again. It's all Putin's fault. It's all the war in Russia's fault, and we've just got to dump our money. I wonder what Putin's got to say about this. Let's actually see what Putin's got to say about this.
But first, I want to talk about the self-inflicted wounds of the New World Order, as the Western world is expected and demanded and forced to essentially commit suicide as a sacrificial offering on the altar of Ukraine.
All right, guys, so let's see what Putin has to say about this.
A few days ago, U.S. announces $2.98 billion in aid to Ukraine. Just another $3 billion. Throw that on the big pile of money we are burning for no foreseeable or actually discussed goals in Ukraine. What is the goal? Is the goal peace? Obviously not. We could have achieved peace before the war ever started. We could have achieved peace in April if Boris Johnson didn't pressure Zelensky to reject the peace talks by Putin.
It's amazing the perfect storm that this whole thing is created, from the lockdowns and COVID to everything that's going on now. It's insane. It's literally like the perfect storm. If you believe that all of these different things are a coincidence, I don't know if there's any hope for you. I love you, but open your eyes.
We'll start with clip number 26. Here is Putin saying the EU has lost its political sovereignty. Let's listen. He says all attempts to keep up the appearances and the talk about allegedly acceptable costs in the name of pseudo-unity cannot hide the fact that the European Union has lost its political sovereignty and its bureaucratic elites are dancing to someone else's tune. Doing everything they're told from on high while hurting their own people, economies, and businesses.
When he says doing all they are told from on high, who is he talking about? Is he talking about the World Economic Forum, the Bill Gateses of the world, the Federal Reserve banks, the international banks? Are we talking about BlackRock? I mean, I don't know, but I'm guessing I'm on the right track.
It's absolutely true. You cannot deny it. That clip is from June of this year. There's a reason that you don't get to hear Vladimir Putin's side of things. I mean, are people even aware that Putin has floated peace agreement after peace agreement? He has made very clear his desires and his ends and his war aims, and that before the conflict ever started, we could have come to some sort of peaceable conclusion between Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah, let's see if they have any more by Putin.
But that he's making will be in cooperation with Putin on American or Western media, because he tells the truth about what our government and our leadership is really up to. Here's Putin again. He says surging inflation in product and commodity markets has become a reality long before the events of this year.
True.
The world has been driven to this situation by many years of irresponsible macroeconomic policies pursued by the G7 countries.
The green energy stuff.
Including uncontrolled emission and accumulation of unsecured debt. Unwilling or unable to find other solutions, the governments of leading Western economies simply accelerated their money printing machines and used
all those checks we got during COVID. The American people actually saw very little of that money. Most of it went to corporations. They just printed money like crazy during the pandemic.
This ignorant method to cover their unprecedented budget deficits. I've already cited this figure. Over the past 2 years, the money supply in the United States has grown by more than 38%.
That's almost 40% of the amount of money that we've just printed out of thin air, that we don't have anything to back it up with.
That's $5.9 trillion. Wow. The EU's money supply has also increased dramatically over this period. It grew by about 20%, or 2.5 trillion euros.
Wow.
Today's rising prices, accelerating inflation, shortages of food and fuel, and problems in the energy sector are the result of system-wide errors in the economic policies of the current U.S. administration and European bureaucracy. So they printed money in huge quantities, and then what? Where did that money go?
Yeah, where did it go?
It obviously went towards purchasing goods and services outside the West. This is where the newly printed money flowed.
How come we don't hear any of this from our people? Why don't we hear any of this from our people? Like, what's actually causing all this money stuff, all this economic stuff?
They literally began to vacuum up and sweep out global markets. The interests of other states, including the poorest ones, were disregarded. They were left with scraps at exorbitant prices.
Wow.
While at the end of 2019, the U.S. imported about $250 billion of goods per month, this figure has now grown to $350 billion.
Wow. So we're importing $350 billion worth of goods. I wonder what we're exporting.
It is noteworthy that the growth was 40%, exactly in proportion to the unsecured money supply printed in recent years.
Yeah.
They handed out printed money and used it to sweep up goods from markets of third world countries. Obviously, such a sharp increase in demand without adequate supply has triggered a wave of shortages and global inflation. This is where global inflation occurs.
I think he said originates, but either way, guys, this is what's going on now. What exactly do we have here? We have ESG, which is the World Economic Forum and the UN's way of guiding companies into their policies, into their political policies. And it's this technocratic, fascist type thing we've got going on. It's insane, but that's what's going on. So what are these policies doing in countries like Germany and France and Italy and places like that? All right, guys, let's check this out real quick here. It says Czech protest was just the beginning as Germany begins massive revolt. This is off a show called Redacted.
Let's talk about today's top story. And it is a revolt in Europe. I mean, it's going to become a revolt in the United States if the mainstream media will actually cover the story. Something huge.
They won't cover the story.
Which happened this week. And the Western governments better start paying attention to the people because people are pissed. I saw someone in the chat, one of the first comments tonight live in our live show said, what do we do about this? What do we do about these governments? I said, we need to rise up. We need to rise up and throw these bums out. We need to tell them that their politics driving us into the ground is done. And we need to elect new leaders. That's what we need to do. We need to take it to the streets like they just did in Prague this weekend. Now, this is not getting any coverage in the mainstream media. Very little. 70,000 people poured into the streets of Prague this weekend to demand a new government.
70,000 people.
And not just that, demand a new government, and they want a move away from NATO. We don't want to be in NATO. We don't want to have anything to do with NATO and the European Union. They're sick of these woke politicians. They're sick of these policies that are driving them into a cold, dark winter.
So they know that a cold, dark winter is coming, and 70,000 people just flooded the streets of Prague to demand an entirely new government and to step away from the UN and all of the Western stuff that we're pushing, you know? Wild.
And they said they also are done. They want neutrality. They do not want them sending billions of dollars to Ukraine. Enough is enough.
This is amazing because this has been all but absent from Western media.
Yeah. I mean, there's very little coverage of it at all. Now, just think about that, right? If 70,000 people just marched on Washington, right? There would be coverage of that.
You would think.
Yeah, if 70,000 people marched on Washington, they wouldn't have any choice. Although with the trucker convoy, we didn't get much media. We didn't get much media stuff about that.
I mean, it's amazing that you get labeled that way. We saw this with Justin Trudeau, labeling these people racist, right?
The truckers.
The trucker convoy in Canada, they were racist, and he called them
terrorists.
He called them the N-word with an A-Z-I in it.
Oh, wow.
He called them that too. He called them racist. He called them terrorists. And then we saw the same thing last week from President Biden in Philadelphia, giving that crazy speech, talking about basically
extremists.
70 million Republicans are extremists.
I'm sure
people who voted
you know
for Trump.
About.
This is the type of rhetoric that this prime minister of the Czech Republic wants to take on. So it wasn't just in the Czech Republic. Then it started spreading to Germany. This happened in Cologne. This was this weekend. I mean, and look at this. Just look at the tunnel here and the thousands of people pouring through the tunnels saying the same thing. They demand the lifting of sanctions against Russia and neutrality in the conflict in Ukraine.
And they're demanding, right, something that we thought was kind of a given, that your politicians look out for your own country, right, in a way that does not harm the weakest first.
What she's talking about there is taxation and a government representing the people who pays its salary. So we go to work and we work and give like a fourth to a third of our paychecks to wherever it's going, to the Ukraine, to the green energy stuff, to companies and like the government that hates our guts. What are we doing? It's time to start that parallel economy that Tim Pool is always talking about, guys. Public square, all that good stuff. Okay, so we hear about all this stuff over in Europe. We hear about the power outages. We hear about the blackouts. We hear about people paying over $1,000 for wood. But what does that mean here in our own backyard, the good old US of A? The fact of the matter is that we were able to sort of postpone this whole thing because in 2016, we elected a president who wasn't all about this globalist stuff. In 2020, the world powers that be were able to kind of remedy that and put the US back on track, even though we're behind Europe. So let's just take a look. When you search for Gavin Newsom on Twitter, I want to show you guys what we're looking at as far as California goes. Now, California, basically, Gavin Newsom came. There's a video on here of him talking about setting your thermostats at 78 degrees. There's things on here. So let's just look at Gavin Newsom. If you search Twitter here, let's take a look at this. Okay. How California averted power blackouts. They received text to conserve. Let's see. Oh man, things just keep popping up here. It's like even different than what I searched before. Do you think Gavin Newsom's house is at 78 degrees and that he's conserving energy all day? I mean, this is a big deal, guys. At this point, you have to assume Gavin Newsom and his cohorts on the DNC are being funded by Big Candle. Big Candle. All right, let's listen to what Gavin Newsom has to say to tell everybody what to do here.
California and many other Western states are experiencing simply unprecedented temperatures. In fact, this heat wave is on track to be both the hottest and the longest on record for the...
He said it was on track. This is not the longest or the hottest summer that California's had on record. I think it's like the 3rd or the 5th or something like that.
The state and many parts of the West for the month of September. Californians, you've stepped up to help in a big way to keep the lights on so far. But we're heading to the worst part of this heat wave, and the risk for outages is real and it's immediate.
So I always press spacebar.
Temperatures throughout.
I always press spacebar with Twitter here, but look, these policies, these liberal people get into office, like these people in California, these people in all of these blue states, and they enact these policies, and then these things happen, and then all of a sudden it's your responsibility to turn your power off and to turn your AC off, to do all this stuff. It's your responsibility.
For outages is real and it's immediate. These triple-digit temperatures throughout much of our state are leading, not surprisingly, to record demand on the energy grid. Everyone has to do their part to help step up for just a few more days. Individuals, the state, industries, business, all doing their part to help reduce strain on the grid.
Wow.
Now here's specifically what you can do. In the early morning hours, particularly tomorrow and the next day or so, pre-cool your home. Run your air conditioning earlier in the day when more power is available. And we encourage you to close your windows and blinds to keep your home cool as well. And today and tomorrow afternoon, after 4 p.m., in particular 4 p.m., please turn your thermostat up to 78 degrees or higher and avoid, to the extent possible, using any really large appliances.
So no washing machines or dryers, guys. We've got to all do our part here and continue to go green, okay? It's your responsibility to continue to enforce this green energy stuff that we're doing. So just do your part and get hot in the summer and don't wash your clothes, okay?
You can visit flexalert.org to learn more about what you can do. Californians, you've rallied before, and we can do it again.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Let's see. Look, Gavin Newsom debuts new line of California summer clothing. Oh, man. Too much. Too much. Let's check this out real quick here. There's a very clear contrast between California and Florida. You can choose the Gavin Newsom model, where you may not have electricity tonight, or the Ron DeSantis model. I know my choice.
You have a very stark dichotomy here. You've got the Gavin Newsom model, where you may not have electricity tonight, or you have the Ron DeSantis model, a state that also happens to be hot, where I can guarantee you my fellow Floridians will be able to turn on the lights this evening. These are the two models, and what this comes down to...
Wow. She just called it right out, like where you might not have power tonight, or you can go to Florida, where I definitely guarantee you that people are going to have power.
...is a utopia for renewable energy, where they're relying on solar, they're relying on hydraulic power. Jeremy White, I believe, is the political reporter from California, who said about 27% is currently renewable energy. Well, what happened?
All right, well, guys, what I'm trying to get to here, do you think Gavin Newsom is turning off his air conditioner? Gavin Newsom should be drug checked. Yesterday, we rallied together during this historic heat wave. Today, let's do it again. We are now in a flex alert. Here's what to do until 9 p.m. tonight. Set thermostats to 78. Turn off unnecessary lights. Avoid using large appliances. Guys, this is coming for us over here. These policies that are being enacted by all of the Western, like United Nations, the World Economic Forum people, this whole thing is coming here. We've got to stop it. There's like 90 days, isn't it? Or 9 weeks or something until the election. Get out there and make some changes, guys. Like, we've got to do it. We've got to do it. We've got to do it. All right, on to the next. All right, let's get into some lighter-hearted stuff. Okay, we've got the new Lord of the Rings. Guys, here's the thing. I'm a huge geek. I had all of the extended edition Lord of the Rings on DVD when they first came out. I used to watch them religiously. When The Hobbit came out, even though everyone had all this stuff to say about it comparatively, it was still a great trilogy. The Hobbit was a great trilogy. Lord of the Rings. Tolkien is one of the English literary geniuses to ever walk the face of the earth, right? I mean, there's stories of him sitting in up in a loft at school, at college, talking with C.S. Lewis, and them like sitting together over an ale and a cigar, talking about their different worlds and like what they were going to do with their worlds and the creatures and all that. It's just so cool to me. So basically, we've got this new prequel called Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. And I heard that Jeff Bezos' own son came up to him and said, "Dad, don't mess this up. It means too much to too many people." And he's right. So what did I do? My girlfriend and I sat down. She's a huge Lord of the Rings fan too, a huge Tolkien fan too. And so we sit down and we watch the first 2 episodes of The Rings of Power. And anyway, I'm going to read this review right here. This is from The Guardian, so we know it's legit. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power review, so astounding it makes House of the Dragon look amateur. Right there, I'm going to have to fact check them on that. The House of the Dragon, the episodes that I've seen so far are intriguing. They stay true, for the most part, to like the plot and the characters that were created for the books, for the show that was on. And they've stayed pretty true to that. They've stayed true to the Targaryens. They've stayed true to the dragon stuff. It's actually really well done. I'm actually not mad at the new Game of Thrones show at all. And so it gave me a little bit of hope for this Lord of the Rings show. Guys, let's read this, okay? The visual splendor of this rich, gorgeous Tolkien drama will make you gawp throughout. Watch it on the largest TV you can. Okay, so The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, is likely to prove divisive, not least depending on whether you watch it on a big TV or squint at its splendor on a phone or laptop. It is so rich and gorgeous that it is easy to spend the first episode simply gawping at the landscapes as it swoops and swooshes between the lands and elves and dwarves, humans and harfoots. This is TV that is made for big screens, although surely destined to be watched on smaller ones. It is so cinematic and grand that it makes House of the Dragon look as if it had been cobbled together on Minecraft. Wrong. Game of Thrones, the new Game of Thrones is great visually. Yeah, they didn't have the budget that Lord of the Rings had. Lord of the Rings got a lot of great outer shots of like landscape, and it seems like they constructed like one city and kind of like just changed the colors and the scenery around the city, and they just popped it everywhere where they showed like an old city of the elves or whatever. Pretty lazy, if you ask me, for the type of budget that they have. Here we go. It makes it difficult to judge The Rings of Power as an ordinary series because so much about it is extraordinary. It is Tolkien, which means this world is already venerated and beloved by so many, whether in the form of the books, Peter Jackson's films, or both. There is an extraordinary weight of expectation before any viewer presses play. This is true. Extraordinary weight of expectation. These fans are not normal fans. They're not your Marvel fans. These people are die-hard, like living in this world, cosplay type people, right? Anyway, look at some of the scenery here. it goes on. It's got some spoilers in here. I'm not going to go over the story, but it's, basically, here's the deal. When Tolkien described this world, he described the elves as a certain type of person. They looked a certain way. They were fair-skinned, blonde-haired, because they couldn't be damaged by the sun, so the melanin in their skin wouldn't have gotten darker because they were elves, and they didn't get, their skin was always light and fair. It has nothing to do with a skin color being better than the other one. It's just what Tolkien created in his own mind. So the least that you could do is try to stay true to the characters that he developed. If you're going to write your own show and come up with your own world, you can do whatever you want. Nobody's going to get mad at you. But for somebody else's world that created an entire universe, this is just ridiculous. Let me read you this, just a little thing about this fascist stuff. Okay, here we go. So this is from the Genesis Times. Let's get that off of there. This is from the Genesis Times. It says, Amazon combats fascism by casting butt-ugly elves for Rings of Power series. Can you imagine being one of the actors on here and being hired because you're ugly? To combat rampant bigotry, including the insidious fascism in Hollywood, Amazon is casting butt-ugly actors to play roles played traditionally held by beautiful people. We interviewed Alexei Romanu, chief casting consultant for Amazon's groundbreaking new series, The Rings of Power, to get the scoop. Basically, he asks here, I'd like to start with the elephant in the room, the elves. There's been considerable backlash, especially online, in response to many of Amazon's casting decisions. Not all of the elves in the Rings of Power look like traditional elves that we're familiar with. And here is the answer. Jumping right in, I see. Well, Jeremy, you're right. Our elves are different. We made this choice deliberately. Tolkien, no doubt, was a literary genius. Fantasy, as we know it today, could not exist without his monumental contributions. Unfortunately, his work reflects the prejudices of his time. Despite all of its wholesomeness, Tolkien's Middle-earth is undeniably fascist. All of Tolkien's elves, without exception, are described as having beautiful faces. By contrast, we at Amazon want to create a Middle-earth that validates all faces. And that's why so many of our elves are ugly. And watching the first two, I can tell you right now that besides one elf, they're all pretty ugly. I mean, they did it on purpose. This hasn't been easy, of course. We faced quite a bit of opposition. Hollywood, as you know, has a serious problem with facism. Sure, there were always ugly actors, but historically, they were only ever given bit parts, and the few who actually did land major roles had to work twice as hard. Hollywood has come a long way, but let's face it, no pun intended, we're nowhere close to seeing a Captain America with crooked teeth, acne, and a weak chin. Is there anything wrong with looking at beautiful people and saying, wow, that's a beautiful person? And knowing that God gives everybody their own features and some people are just more blessed than others, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder, of course. But I mean, there's a standard of beauty that most people ascribe to, right? I mean, that's just sort of life. Anyway, how insane is it that they took one of the greatest stories of all time ever created in someone's brain, in someone's mind, and they said, well, he was a literary genius, but he had some stuff wrong, and so we're going to fix the things that he got wrong because of the time period he lived in. It's our job to go back into his world, into his loved world by these fans, and change the things that we think are wrong and bigoted. That's just what we do. And other than just changing what Tolkien created for this world, also you have to take into account the script. Okay, this isn't based on any books. This isn't part of the script that Tolkien wrote. This was completely written it's the people who wrote the script are not Tolkien. Okay, the script is basically a bunch of words thrown together. It feels like it's trying to sound articulate. It's trying to sound intelligent. It's trying to sound like Tolkien and the way that he wrote. But they just don't land it. They don't nail it, first of all. But a bad script can be saved by good acting. And ladies and gentlemen, we don't really have that either. I mean, the whole thing is about Galandria and her history. And they managed to find the one actress who could she's literally like an elven Karen. And she is crying all the time. She's making emotional decisions. An elf falls in the snow and they have to call her like more than once to come like have compassion on this. That's not the Galadriel that we know from The Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry. The acting is subpar. The script is horrible. The only thing this show really has going for it is the visual effects that the budget allowed them to have, which at parts also seems a bit lazy. That's just what I got to say about that. Now, I think that they know that the super fans are still going to watch the series just because it's Lord of the Rings and some of us feel an obligation, but we're going to be watching it, holding our tongue and biting our teeth. I'll tell you that. Okay, guys, Tom Macdonald has a new video coming out. He has not been releasing a lot of content. Let's check out some of the posts on Instagram that he's posted recently here. Okay. All right. So let's see what Tom Macdonald's been saying here recently about... okay, so he just posted this a week ago. You probably haven't seen my face in a while. Sorry, I haven't been around, guys. I've been in the studio working on the best album of all time. I know a lot of you are worried, but I'm good. Nova's good and the dogs are good. Stay tuned. Something crazy this way comes. Love y'all. So glad to be back. Right on. Let's go, Tom. He's holding his guitar, so he's laying down some tracks. All right, he also posted this. Let's see what he's got to say here.
Said about this most recent Joe Biden speech. You know, the one with the red lights? Where he's looking kind of like a pale Skeletor. Just so angry. Don't be mad that he said a lot of Republicans are extremists. These are the same people who think a woman is anybody with an imagination who identifies as one. These are the same people that tanked the economy, inflated the price of living, brought us to the brink of war with Russia, cowered from China, funded the pandemic, ignored a fentanyl epidemic, food shortages, gas prices, amplified social unrest, took us to the verge of an energy crisis, and divided America at record speed. If anybody else made this many bad decisions, we wouldn't take a damn thing they say seriously. Wow. Don't let them upset you. They wouldn't know what an extremist looked like if it was fully dressed in body armor, burning down a city in broad daylight, and then walked up to them claiming to identify as a lawnmower, offering to cut their grass. Oh, snap. Look, my dog has better judgment than these people. And I've seen my dog try to eat his own shit. Look, I know...
All right, guys, let's check this out. This is what he posted about his new video.
Where has Tom Macdonald been lately?
Who's Tom Macdonald?
You know, Tom Macdonald? That homophobic, transphobic, racist, ugly, ignorant, bigot rapper.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. He hasn't been on social media, like, at all. Like, he's barely posting. Maybe we finally did it. Maybe we canceled him this time. Maybe he's gone forever.
You really think?
Nope. Still here. Dropping a brand new music video this Friday.
Let's go.
9 a.m. Enjoy.
Let's go. So basically, we know Tom, for a while, was dropping almost every Friday. It was like 3 Fridays a month. He was putting out double albums and then doing videos that weren't even like on the album sometimes, like just constantly recording, constantly writing, and constantly releasing videos. Him and Nova were just crushing it constantly. They've taken a little bit of a break. They've taken it like back a little bit. I think Tom is reevaluating sort of what his music can look like, especially because just rapping about like social issues constantly, even though he has a lot more music out there, the really popular stuff is all the political stuff, right? So I'm pretty sure this is what his video is going to be about.
We're living in a time where a 150-year-old man with dementia is the leader of the free world. And we're living in a time where an angry 9-year-old girl named Greta Thunberg is the most renowned environmental scientist on planet Earth. We're living in a time where ultra-powerful billionaires can fly to space and want to put microchips in your brain. We're even living in a time where a man was named Woman of the Year.
Yeah.
We're also living in a time where I'm dropping a brand new music video this Friday at 9 a.m.
Let's go.
It's probably the most impressive music video I've ever made. So it's not all bad. And hey, even if you don't like the video on Friday morning, just remember, there's no way it can make the world even more f***ed up than it already is.
True. Very true. I'm excited now. I imagine that the video is going to be along the lines of this stuff here. One thing is I saw another post that he posted somewhere, I think it was on YouTube actually, where he had his black contacts in and he said, hopefully the guy with the black eyes shows up on Friday. So we can all look forward to that, even though everything seems to be falling apart, even though the economy is on the fritz, even though people are talking about civil war, even though we don't know what we're getting into as far as food prices and gas prices and everything, we do know there's still artists out there like Tom Macdonald who will say the truth. A lot of people say that he's like lame and that he's like a grifter, whatever. But if you listen to his music and you know Tom Macdonald, you know that he's the real deal and he's telling it how it is. And we need more people like him. By the way, if you haven't checked out my music, check out JD Break on Spotify, on Apple Music, anywhere you can get. I have 2 singles out. I've got a couple more ready that I haven't released. I haven't made videos for yet, but I'm excited to get back into that. Guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me for this little episode 2 news for working class people. Keep your ear to the ground, guys. Make sure that you are getting yourself ready and prepared for something that you might not be ready for, that a lot of the world isn't ready for. Just make sure that you're prayed up and strapped up and all the stuff that you can do to protect yourself, your family, spiritually, mentally, and physically. Love you guys. I'll be doing a reaction to the Tom Macdonald music video on Friday, so look for that like almost after he drops it. I'm going to be recording it that day. So look forward to that, guys, and until next time, peace.